In the wake of Nintendo's investor call and a bunch of mistranslations and misinformation surrounding things that were said, I figured now was a good time to sit down, put my game industry analyst hat on, and give everyone a sort of State of the Switch address highlighting where Nintendo actually claims to be in terms of the widely speculated generational shift, and detailing the roadmap I'm discerning from the clues we've been given over the last several months. The biggest takeaway from the investor call was the statement that there would be no new hardware launching in this fiscal year, which ends March 31st, 2024. I just want to take a moment to shout out Zach from Switchforce for debunking this as a mistranslation, clarifying that what was actually said was that sales projections would only be based on the Switch, Switch OLED, and Switch Lite, and not include any sales of new hardware. Meanwhile, Nikkei is reporting that new hardware is on track for this spring, so while that sounds like a huge difference between what was being reported in the West and what was actually said, it's more likely that we're looking at the difference between first and second quarters of 2024. That tracks with the Pokemon leak. However, the reduced sales projections are a huge elephant in the room when you consider the very recent and substantial uptick in Nintendo's hardware orders. While their investor call told one tale about Switch's place in its lifespan, their production movements say something else entirely. They're getting ready to ship a lot of current generation Switch hardware in the near future, and this existing hardware only caveat on their projections opens up a loophole wide enough to drive an 18-wheeler through. Hauling Switch Pros, naturally. I've been saying for a while now that when it comes to Nintendo hardware, if it's next gen, it's not coming soon, and if it's coming soon, it's not next gen. I will die on this hill. It's also what's going to give the Switch its path to the all-time gaming hardware sales record, because people have been making enough noise demanding new hardware that Nintendo knows full well just how much money is on the table if they offer up a here and now, or at least a very near future hardware upgrade to tide people over until the actual next gen launch in a couple of years. Knock $50 off the price of the existing SKUs, launch the Switch Pro at $350, and get ready to sell another 30 million consoles over the next few years as we watch the Switch's tail. Now, I'm going to veer away from the investor call for a moment because another piece of news came out recently that is relevant to this topic. The Nintendo Switch, as of March, has sold 1 billion units of software, and counting, still, in its lifetime. The Billion Game Club is pretty exclusive in the game industry, with only one other member to date, the PlayStation 2. With the updated hardware figures from the investor call, this means a 1-to-8 software attach rate all time for the Switch, which is an obscene ratio for modern times, though not quite as exclusive as billion games sold. This also puts some insane respect on specific games in the Switch's library. Out of that billion sales, more than 1 in every 20 is Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, more than 1 in 25 is Animal Crossing New Horizon, and more than 1 in 50 is Pokemon Scarlet or Violet. Of course, the launch of Tears of the Kingdom will throw these ratios off considerably throughout the year, but they're still impressive figures by any measure. Now we can talk about the Switch 2. If you haven't watched my video on navigating the rumors and why I know that the leaks and rumors that are out there in the wild right now are referring to 2 separate devices rather than just one, you should absolutely go check that out now because it provides a nice story thus far for what I'm about to talk about. An age-old reality in gaming is that platform holders are always working on the next wave of hardware. The next generation of PlayStation and Xbox are already in the works to some effect or another, and we actually have more insight on that than we normally have at this stage in the development cycle because both companies have effectively locked in 2028 as their target launch year. That doesn't mean that there's a solid spec as of right now, or a settled design or anything of that nature, just that work is being done. Likewise, Nintendo has assuredly had new hardware in the pipeline since 2017, if not even before the Switch launched. However, if you look at the clues, you'll already understand why whatever was being worked on at that point is not the Switch 2, or whatever it'll be called when it arrives. This is important because one of the key metrics in my projections has been that the spec for Nintendo's next console has just now been locked in the last few months. Why am I so sure of that? Well, just listen to Shuntaro Furukawa himself. Nintendo was blindsided by the Switch's enduring success. Knowing them, there's a good chance their next platform was going to be something a little more on the radical side, something that would have a difficult time bringing the Switch along in the way of backward compatibility, either for architectural reasons or because of matters of interface. That's the side of Miyamoto's influence that is more detrimental to the company than anything else. It's the side of his influence that gave us Star Fox Zero. However, when the Switch made it through 2021 and 2022 still seeing sales numbers like we got for Animal Crossing and Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and now that it's one of only 2 members of the Billion Game Club, it's imperative that whatever Nintendo launches next is fully compatible with Switch's software and ecosystem. There's just no way they can get away with anything that falls short of that expectation and necessity anymore. This would immediately cancel any hardware projects that are unable to meet that standard and replace them with something that can deliver on the need. No doubt, around this same time, Furukawa saw that PlayStation and Xbox have shed their long-term compatibility problems by moving to an x86 x86 architecture, and understandably wanted something just like that for Nintendo to give every future platform the advantage of having the Switch's vast and successful library available off the jump. Drawing a compatibility line for Nintendo based on Switch games as the foundation is a pretty specific situation that is a lot more particular than anything as standard as x86. Doesn't that line up pretty well with all of this talk of a next-gen NVIDIA Tegra that would be necessary for a new platform to be still compatible with Switch games? Nintendo, based on their history, should always be extremely wary of generational transitions, because they've historically been so inclined toward unforced errors that you never know whether there's a Wii on the other end of a generational shift or a Wii U. Nintendo YouTubers have discussed the difficulties of backward compatibility with the Switch at length, exhaustingly so, but there's nothing about these difficulties that make it impossible, or to even suggest that taking their chances starting over from zero with a new platform is in any way the smarter, more advisable option against doing the work and pursuing the partnerships needed to make it happen. This leaves them with no realistic recourse but to make the facilitation of this compatibility a key point of their next-gen development. This is where the context comes from for my certainty that the next-gen spec has just now been locked in, as established by past videos on this channel. On the timeline, that puts us right at the point where dev kits are in the fabrication process and being shipped out to in-house and third-party development partners. From there, projects will get pitched, greenlit, and put into active development, from which we're looking at 2 to 3 years on average before these projects are ready to be released. That would hold back the system's release in itself. That's where my projection of holiday 2025 for the Switch 2 comes from, as well as a slew of other positions that will undoubtedly get treated like hot takes when they're really just the result of me paying attention. We have a lot of ports, collections, and remasters to look forward to the point where I made a whole top 10 list about what that wave of titles should include. Metroid Prime 4 is a Switch game, full stop. Pikmin 4 looks like the end of the road, not because that's where the Switch's new original release pipeline is going to dry up, but because Nintendo genuinely wants to give Tears of the Kingdom the spotlight all to itself before they start talking about the holiday 2023 into 2024 release calendar, the first wave of games that should be Switch Pro enhanced out of the box. It's not hard to draw the timeline from there either. Nintendo has already aligned itself with Gamescom, which is coming up in August. In addition to the holiday lineup and Metroid Prime 4, that's almost assuredly where the Switch Pro gets unveiled, and probably which side of the Q1, Q2 fence it'll land on. That's why Nintendo isn't promising any news or reveals for Nintendo Live in September. We'll already know the immediate future at that point, but you can be sure that attendees will get hands-on time with the games that were revealed at Gamescom, setting up the holiday push, whatever that might entail. The Switch Pro itself might even be there. Of course, some of you are undoubtedly concerned about Nintendo's flagging hardware numbers from the investor call, but even though I'm convinced that the Switch Pro will carry the Switch to the all-time sales lead of over 155 million units sold because there's so much obvious demand for a more powerful Switch, I don't think that the current performance of the Switch hardware available now is any cause for concern, because at 125 million units moved already, there's a level of market saturation that the system has already reached, meaning demand will just go down naturally for the baseline hardware because most of the people who want it already have it. At that stage, it's the software sales that give you the real insight to the state of the device, and with major releases still selling, you have a unicorn situation where the player base is very energized and all of that money and energy behind it is zeroed in on software. That's a genuine industry rarity that Nintendo, Sony, or Microsoft would all kill for. If you followed the game industry for any amount of time, you know that it's software, not hardware, that drives platform holders' profits. So this is an extremely favorable position for Nintendo to find themselves in, while also sending out the Switch Pro to placate the more malcontent corners of their player base to keep them from disengaging entirely as they wait for an actual next-gen successor. They won't be targeting newcomers with the Switch Pro. These are going to be customers already well invested in the Switch library, with the primary objective of keeping them interested for the next few years. Yes, Digital Foundry not all that long ago claimed that a Switch Pro was cancelled and replaced by the OLED model, but hitting the reset button on your next-gen R&D is plenty of reason to drag such a project out of mothballs and get it into the market to get the Switch across the generational finish line. That's all for now. If you like this video, then please be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, as it all really helps grow the channel. Click the notification bell to know right away when the next video's out. I'm Patrick Mifflin, and I'll see you back here soon.